The moment Baptiste walked into the conference room on the 42nd floor of Shin Industries' Caribbean headquarters, she knew she'd made a catastrophic mistake. Because sitting at the head of the sleek glass table, reviewing her resume with those same intense dark eyes that had studied her body 6 months ago, was him. The man from Barbados. The one-night stand she'd ghosted before sunrise. The gorgeous stranger she'd assumed she'd never see again. Shin Jae-won looked up, and Deli watched recognition flare in his expression. A micro-expression quickly controlled, but there. He knew. He absolutely knew. Ms. Baptiste. His voice was exactly as she remembered. Smooth, accented, the kind of voice that had whispered filthy things in her ear while his hands mapped every inch of her skin. Please, sit. Deli's legs carried her to the chair on autopilot. Her mind was screaming to run, to make an excuse, to preserve what was left of her dignity. But she needed this job. Desperately. Her event planning business was drowning in debt. Her divorce had left her financially devastated. This executive assistant position, with its 6-figure salary and benefits, was her lifeline. So she sat, smoothed her pencil skirt, met his eyes with as much professionalism as she could muster. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Shin. Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe, or challenge. Your resume is impressive. 7 years in event management, excellent references, bilingual in English and French. And you're from Barbados originally? Born and raised. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Perfect. This position requires someone who understands both Caribbean and Korean business cultures. Someone who can navigate complex social situations with grace. His eyes held hers. Someone discreet. The emphasis on that last word made her cheeks burn. He was sending a message. He remembered everything, and he expected her silence. Discretion is one of my strongest qualities, Deli said, lifting her chin. I'm sure it is. You seem very good at disappearing when necessary. The barb landed. Deli had ghosted him, slipped out of the hotel room at dawn without a note, without her real name, without explanation. At the time, it had seemed smart, safe, a clean break from an incredible night that could never be more than that. Now, sitting across from him in a job interview, it seemed like the worst decision she'd ever made. Before we go further, hit like and subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. But to understand how Deli Baptiste ended up interviewing to be the assistant of her one-night stand, we need to go back 6 months. Back to a beach bar in Barbados, where a recently divorced woman decided to do something reckless. 6 months earlier, Deli had been celebrating her divorce finalization the only way that made sense. Rum punch at her favorite beach bar, dancing to soca music, and determinedly not thinking about the 7-year marriage that had imploded when she'd discovered her husband's affair. You look too sad for a beach party, a voice had said beside her. Accented, Korean, maybe Japanese, Deli wasn't sure. She'd looked up and found a man so beautiful it almost hurt to look at him directly. Tall, lean, wearing linen pants and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up. His dark hair was slightly tousled by the ocean breeze, and his eyes were studying her with an intensity that made her stomach flip. I'm not sad. I'm liberated. Deli raised her glass. My divorce was finalized today. Then congratulations. Freedom is worth celebrating. He gestured to the bartender. Whatever she's drinking, and a whiskey for me. They'd talked for hours. He was in Barbados for business meetings, something about tech expansion, though he'd been vague on details. She was an event planner trying to rebuild her life after her marriage collapse. They'd discussed everything and nothing. Music, travel, the difference between Barbados rum and Korean soju. You never told me your name, Deli had said sometime after her 4th rum punch. Does it matter? I suppose not. Just tonight, right? No names, no complications? Exactly what I was thinking. The kiss had been inevitable. His mouth tasted like whiskey and promise, and when he'd murmured, "Your place or mine?" against her lips, Deli hadn't hesitated. Mine. It's closer. They'd barely made it inside her hotel room before his hands were in her hair, her dress was on the floor, and everything that had been building all evening exploded into something consuming and perfect. He'd been an attentive lover, the kind who paid attention to every reaction, every sound she made, who took his time learning what she liked, who made her feel beautiful and desired in ways her ex-husband never had. "You're incredible," he'd whispered afterward, both of them tangled in sheets and satisfaction. "So are you, mystery man." They'd fallen asleep wrapped together, and Deli had thought, this is perfect. One perfect night with a beautiful stranger. No expectations, no complications, just pleasure. So when she'd woken at dawn to find him still sleeping, his face peaceful, vulnerable in ways he probably never allowed when awake, she'd made a choice. Leave. Walk away. Keep it perfect by not letting reality intrude. She'd dressed silently, grabbed her things, and slipped out of her own hotel room like a thief. Had checked out early, gone to stay with her best friend Anya, and spent the next week determinedly not thinking about the gorgeous stranger she'd never see again. "You ghosted him?" Anya had said, incredulous. "That's usually the man's move." "Exactly. I'm reclaiming my power. He was great, but it was just one night. Better to leave it perfect than risk it becoming complicated." "Or you're scared. Scared of actually connecting with someone after Marcus." "I'm not scared. I'm practical." But Anya had been right. Deli had been terrified. Terrified of the way she'd felt so safe in a stranger's arms. Terrified of how easy it had been to laugh with him, trust him, let him see her vulnerable. Terrified that if she'd stayed, if she'd exchanged numbers and names and tried for something more, it would eventually end in the same betrayal and heartbreak her marriage had. Better to ghost him first. Better to control the ending. She'd thought about him sometimes over the following months, late at night when she couldn't sleep, or when she passed the beach bar where they'd met. Wondered what his name was, if he'd been angry or relieved to find her gone, if he thought about her too. But Deli had a business to save and a life to rebuild. She couldn't afford to dwell on one perfect night with a man she'd never see again. Until 6 months later, when desperation drove her to apply for an executive assistant position she was overqualified for, and she walked into that interview to find her one-night stand was the CEO. The position requires long hours, frequent travel, and absolute discretion, Jae-won was saying, his tone all business now. "You'd manage my schedule, coordinate with international offices, handle confidential communications. It's demanding work." "I understand. I've managed high-pressure environments before." "Yes, your event planning business. Why leave it to become an assistant? Seems like a step backward." Deli could lie. Should lie. But something about his directness made her match it. "My business is failing. The divorce devastated me financially. My ex-husband was my business partner, and he took most of our clients when he left. I've been struggling for 2 years. This position offers stability and a salary I desperately need." Honest. I appreciate that. Jae-won set down her resume. "I'll be equally honest. This situation is complicated. We have history. Brief history, but history nonetheless. If I hire you, people will talk. They'll speculate about why I chose someone I have a personal connection with. We don't have a personal connection. We had one night 6 months ago. No names, no contact since. That's not a connection. That's a coincidence. A coincidence that requires acknowledgement. If you work for me, that night never happened. We maintained strict professionalism. No references to it, No lingering glances, no... I understand. I can be professional. Can you? He leaned forward. Because running away at dawn suggests you struggle with uncomfortable situations. The words stung. I didn't run away. I made a clean exit from an encounter that was meant to be temporary. Without a word, without even a fake name. His voice went quiet. I woke up thinking you might have been a dream. Had to check the hotel records to confirm you'd actually checked out. Deli's chest tightened. You looked for me? Briefly. Before I realized you'd clearly wanted to disappear. Jae-won's expression shuddered. Which is fine. We're adults. We had a good time. You chose to leave. That's your right. Then why mention it now? Because if I hire you, I need to know you won't run again. That when things get difficult, and they will, you won't disappear. I need reliability, Deli. Not someone who ghosts when they're uncomfortable. The use of her first name sent electricity down her spine. This was the first time he'd said it, and hearing it in that voice, the same voice that had groaned her name while... Focus. She needed to focus. I won't run, Deli said firmly. I need this job too much to let pride or awkwardness interfere. You need an assistant. I need employment. We're both professionals. We can make this work. Jae-won studied her for a long moment. Then he stood, extending his hand. The job is yours. Start Monday. Salary and benefits package will be sent to your email by end of day. Deli stood, shaking his hand. The contact was electric, a jolt of sense memory that made her hyper-aware of how those hands had touched her before. Thank you, Mr. Shin. I won't let you down. See that you don't. He held her hand a moment longer than necessary. And Deli? One more rule. What happened between us stays between us. No one in this office needs to know. Understood? Completely. Good. Welcome to Shin Industries. Deli left the interview in a daze. She'd gotten the job that would save her financially. The job that would also require her to work inches away from a man whose body she knew intimately, but whose last name she'd only just learned. You're insane, Anya said when Deli called to tell her. You ghosted your new boss? I didn't know he was going to be my boss. How was I supposed to know some random businessman I slept with would turn out to be the CEO of the company I applied to? It's called doing research. LinkedIn exists for a reason. I was desperate. I applied to 20 positions that week. I didn't deep dive into every CEO's background. Well, now you're going to work for a man who's seen you naked. This is either going to be a disaster or the world's best romance novel. It's going to be professional. That's it. We're both adults. We can handle this. But even as Deli said it, she knew she was lying. Because the moment Jae-won's hand had touched hers, every nerve ending in her body had remembered exactly how good they'd been together. And 6 months of trying to forget him had just become impossible. Deli's first week at Shin Industries was a masterclass in controlled torture. Jae-won was a demanding boss, meticulous, exacting, expecting perfection in everything. But he was also brilliant, fair, and surprisingly patient when she made mistakes. They maintained strict professionalism. He called her Ms. Baptiste in meetings. She called him Mr. Shin. They never referenced that night, never let their eyes linger, never touched beyond what was absolutely necessary. It was agony, because working in close proximity to Jae-won meant constant reminders. The way he rolled up his sleeves when concentrating, revealing forearms she'd gripped while the scent of his cologne when he leaned over her shoulder to review documents. The rare smile he gave when she made him laugh with dry observations about office politics. You're staring again, her coworker May whispered during a staff meeting. I'm not staring. I'm attentively listening to my boss. You're staring like you want to climb him like a tree. And girl, I don't blame you. Shin Jae-won is fine, but he's also completely off limits. The man doesn't date employees, doesn't date anyone, from what I hear. Married to his work. Good to know. Not that I'm interested. Sure you're not. But Deli was interested. Devastatingly interested. And the more time she spent with Jae-won, the more she learned about him beyond that one night. He was a workaholic who stayed until 10 p.m. most nights. He had a dry sense of humor that surprised people who expected him to be cold. He was surprisingly knowledgeable about Caribbean history and made an effort to understand the local business culture. And he was intensely private, deflecting personal questions with practiced ease. "Why the Caribbean?" Deli asked one evening. They were alone in the office, reviewing plans for Shin Industries' regional expansion. "Why not? It's a growing market, stable politically, strategically positioned. Good business sense." That's the corporate answer. What's the real one? Jae-won looked up from his laptop. "Why do you think there's another answer?" "Because everything you do is calculated. You don't make moves without multiple reasons. So, what's the personal one?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I visited Barbados 5 years ago, on vacation, which is rare for me. And I fell in love with it. The pace, the culture, the way people actually lived instead of just worked. I promised myself that when I had the chance, I'd build something here. Create opportunities without destroying what makes this place special. That's actually lovely. Don't sound so surprised. I just didn't expect a tech CEO to have romantic notions about island preservation. I contain multitudes, Ms. Baptiste." His eyes held hers. "As I recall, you were surprised by several things about me." The reference to that night hung between them. Deli's breath caught. This was the first time either had come close to acknowledging what happened. "Mr. Shin, we should maintain professionalism." He looked back at his screen, but she'd seen the heat in his eyes before he'd shuttered it. "It's late. Go home. We'll resume tomorrow." Deli gathered her things with shaking hands. As she reached the door, Jae-won spoke again. "Deli." She turned. He'd used her first name, breaking their unspoken rule. "Yes?" "You're doing excellent work. I made the right choice hiring you. Even though I ghosted you?" "Maybe because of it. You're not afraid to make hard choices. I respect that." Deli left before she could do something stupid, like walk back to his desk, like ask if he thought about that night as much as she did, like admitting that working for him was slowly driving her insane with want. The second month brought their first business trip. A tech conference in Miami that required 3 days of networking, presentations, and late-night strategy sessions. "We'll have adjoining rooms," Jae-won's assistant coordinator informed her. "Standard for CEO and EA. Makes communication easier." Adjoining rooms. 3 days in close quarters with the man she was desperately trying not to think about naked. "Perfect," Deli lied. Miami was a disaster from the start. Their hotel had overbooked and upgraded them to a suite. One suite, with a bedroom and a pull-out couch in the living area. "I'll take the couch," Deli said immediately. "Don't be ridiculous. You're my assistant, not my servant. I'll take the couch. You get the bedroom." "I'm not letting my boss sleep on a couch. That's non-negotiable. End of discussion." They'd argued for 20 minutes before Deli finally agreed. But lying in that massive bed, knowing Jae-won was 20 feet away on an uncomfortable couch, felt wrong. On the second night, after a particularly grueling day of presentations and networking, they'd returned to the suite at 2 a.m. Jae-won had loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves, and poured them both whiskey from the minibar. "You were impressive today," he said, handing her a glass. "The way you handled that investor who was being condescending. Perfect balance of professional and firm. He was being an ass. Someone needed to put him in his place. Most assistants would have stayed quiet. Let me handle it." I'm not most assistants. No. Jae-won's eyes traveled over her face. You're really not. The air between them charged. Deli knew she should leave. Go to bed. Maintain the boundaries they'd established. Instead, she took a drink and said, "Can I ask you something?" Depends on the question. That night, in Barbados, did you know who I was? That I'd applied for this position? No. I don't review every applicant. HR handles initial screening. He moved closer. Why did you leave? Really? Because it was perfect, and I didn't want to ruin it by letting reality intrude. That's a coward's answer. Maybe. Or maybe it's self-preservation. I'd just gotten divorced. I was vulnerable, and you... She stopped. I what? You made me feel things I wasn't ready to feel. Things that scared me. Jae-won set down his glass. And now? Are you still scared? Terrified. Because now I know you. And it's so much worse. Worse how? Because when it was just one night, I could tell myself it was just physical. Just chemistry. But now I know you're brilliant and funny and surprisingly kind underneath the corporate exterior. And I want you more now than I did then. Which is completely inappropriate and... He kissed her. Cut off her rambling confession with his mouth on hers. His hands framing her face. And Deli's defenses shattered. She kissed him back desperately, her fingers tangling in his hair. All the restraint she'd been exercising for 2 months dissolving. He tasted like whiskey and everything she'd been denying herself. We shouldn't, she gasped when they broke apart. I know. His forehead rested against hers. You work for me. This is a terrible idea. The worst. We should stop. We should. Neither of them moved. I think about that night constantly, Jae-won admitted. I've tried not to. Tried to just see you as my assistant. But every time you lean over my desk or laugh at something I say, all I can think about is how you looked in my arms. I ghosted you. I know, and I should be angry about that. Should keep this professional. But God, Deli, I can't stop wanting you. This is a bad idea. The worst idea we've ever had. We'll regret this. Probably. Deli made a choice. Your room or mine? The bedroom's closer. They barely made it. Clothes scattered from the living room to the bedroom in a trail of terrible decisions and desperate need. And when Jae-won's hands and mouth relearned her body, when he made her gasp his name the way he had 6 months ago, Deli knew. There was no going back from this. They'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. And tomorrow, they'd have to face the consequences. Morning brought regret and awkwardness in equal measure. Deli woke tangled in hotel sheets, Jae-won's arm around her waist, and reality crashing down. She'd slept with her boss. Again. After 2 months of successfully maintaining professionalism. I can hear you thinking, Jae-won murmured against her shoulder. Stop panicking. I'm not panicking. I'm rationally assessing how badly we just screwed up our working relationship. We didn't screw anything up. We're adults who gave in to mutual attraction. It doesn't have to change anything. It changes everything. You're my boss. There are power dynamics and HR policies and I don't care. Jae-won rolled to face her, his eyes serious. I'm not going to pretend last night didn't happen. I'm not going to go back to forcing professionalism when all I want is this. What is this exactly? Honestly, I don't know, but I want to find out. Don't you? Deli thought about it, about the past 6 months of trying to forget him, about the 2 months of working together and fighting attraction, about how right this felt despite all the reasons it was wrong. Yes, she admitted, but we need rules. We can't let this affect our work. Agreed. At the office, we maintain professionalism. After hours, we figure out whatever this is. And if it doesn't work? If we crash and burn? Then we're adults about it. But Deli, his hand cupped her face. I don't think we're going to crash and burn. They tried. God, they tried to maintain boundaries. But dating your boss while working as his assistant was impossible. Every meeting was charged with memory. Every business trip became an excuse to tear each other's clothes off. Every late night at the office ended in his private bathroom or bent over his desk. We're terrible at this, Deli gasped one evening. They were supposed to be reviewing quarterly reports. Instead, she was straddling him in his chair, her skirt hiked up, his hands gripping her hips. Terrible at boundaries. Excellent at this, he countered, making her gasp with a particular movement. They'd been together, if you could call it that, for 3 months when the rumors started. Office gossip about their relationship. Speculation about preferential treatment. Whispers about how Deli had seduced her way into her position. They're saying I only got hired because we slept together, Deli told Jae-won one evening. They were in his apartment, a stunning penthouse that had become their regular meeting place. That's not true. I didn't even know who you were when I interviewed you. Try telling them that. May heard 2 VPs discussing whether I earned my promotion through performance or performance. She made air quotes, anger and hurt warring in her chest. I've worked my ass off for 3 months, and they think I'm just sleeping my way up. Then we'll address it. I'll make an announcement. That will make it worse. Confirming the relationship will just validate their assumptions. Deli paced his living room. Maybe we should end this. Make it clear there's nothing between us. Is that what you want? No. But I also don't want my career defined by who I'm sleeping with. Jae-won pulled her close. Your career is defined by your work, which is exceptional. Anyone who suggests otherwise is dealing with their own insecurities. Easy for you to say. You're the CEO. No one questions your qualifications. They question everything about me. My age, my nationality, my methods. I've built this company despite constant skepticism. So I understand what you're facing, Deli. And I'm sorry the relationship I insisted on is making your work harder. You didn't insist. I wanted this too. Then we fight. We prove them wrong by being undeniably good at our jobs. Together. The 4th month brought a reckoning. Deli's ex-husband Marcus showed up at her apartment, drunk and demanding to talk. You're dating your boss? He'd slurred. Classy, Deli. Real classy. Get out. I saw the photos. You and him at that restaurant, looking all cozy, moving on pretty quick after our divorce. Our divorce was 2 years ago. And you're the one who cheated, remember? With good reason. You were always working. Always prioritizing your business over our marriage. My business that you helped destroy when you left. Deli's anger boiled over. You took my clients, Marcus. You sabotaged me out of spite. So don't you dare judge me for moving on. Does he know? Your fancy CEO? Does he know your damaged goods? The words stung because they touched on Deli's deepest fear. That she was, too, broken from her divorce. That Jae-won would realize she came with too much baggage. He knows everything, and he doesn't care, because he's nothing like you. Marcus had left after that, but the damage was done. Deli spent the evening spiraling, convinced that she was dragging Jae-won down with her mess. When Jae-won arrived, she'd given him a key weeks ago. He found her crying on her couch. Hey, what happened? She told him everything. The visit, the accusations, the fear that she was too damaged for this. You're not damaged, Jae-won said firmly, pulling her into his arms. You're human. You've been hurt and you're healing. That doesn't make you less worthy. But I come with so much baggage. Failed marriage, struggling business, ex-husband drama. You could have anyone. Someone easier. Someone who doesn't complicate your life. I don't want easy. I want you. He tilted her face up. Complications and all. Ex-husband drama included. You think I'm not complicated? I'm a workaholic CEO with family issues and a tendency to use work to avoid emotions. We're both messy, Deli. But we're messy together. You really don't care about my past? I care that it hurt you, but it doesn't change how I feel about you. And how do you feel? Jae-won was quiet for a moment. Then, I love you. I've been trying not to say it because it felt too fast, but I love you. I loved you from that first night in Barbados, even though I didn't know your name, and I've fallen deeper every day since. Tears streamed down Deli's face. I love you too. Even though you're my boss and this is completely inappropriate. The most inappropriate relationship I've ever had. We're terrible at professional boundaries. The absolute worst. They laughed, holding each other. Two people who'd found love in the most inconvenient way possible. Month 6 brought the biggest challenge yet. Shin Industries' board of directors learned about their relationship. Someone, probably the disgruntled VP who'd been passed over for promotion, had leaked photos and emails proving Deli and Jae-won were together. They want to meet with us, Jae-won told her, his expression grim. Tomorrow. Both of us. They're going to fire me. They're going to try. But I won't let them. The board meeting was exactly as awful as Deli feared. 8 older executives, mostly men, mostly Korean, staring at her with varying degrees of disapproval. Ms. Baptiste, the chairman began, your relationship with Mr. Shin creates a conflict of interest. As his assistant, you have access to sensitive information. The appearance of impropriety. There's no impropriety, Jae-won interrupted. Deli and I are in a relationship. It began after she was hired, and it hasn't affected her work performance. If anything, she's become even more valuable to the company. That's not the point. The optics show a CEO and his assistant who are professionals at work and partners in private. We've maintained clear boundaries. Have you? Another board member pulled up photos on his tablet. These were taken in your office, after hours, but still on company property. Deli's stomach dropped. The photos showed her and Jae-won in a compromising position in his private office. Nothing explicit, but definitely intimate. Who took these? Jae-won's voice went cold. That's not relevant. What's relevant is that you've created a liability. Ms. Baptiste needs to resign. Or we'll be forced to terminate her. Then you'll have my resignation too, Jae-won said immediately. I won't work for a board that engages in employee surveillance and forces out qualified staff because of personal relationships. The room went silent. The chairman stared. You'd resign over an assistant? I'd resign over a woman I love being treated unjustly. Yes. Jae-won, don't. Deli said quietly. This company is your life. You built this from nothing. I won't let you throw it away for me. You're not throwing anything away. They are. By being narrow-minded and invasive. Mr. Shin, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. You have 2 choices. Accept that Deli and I are together and focus on the excellent work we both do, or accept both our resignations and explain to shareholders why you forced out your most successful CEO over a consensual relationship. The board members exchanged glances. Finally, the chairman sighed. Fine. The relationship can continue. But Ms. Baptiste, you'll need to transfer to a different department. We can't have you reporting directly to someone you're romantically involved with. No, Jae-won said. She stays as my EA. She's the best assistant I've ever had. Moving her would be detrimental to my effectiveness. That's non-negotiable. Either she transfers or I quit. Deli stood, her voice steady despite her racing heart. You want to remove the conflict of interest? Fine, I'll leave. But not because you're forcing me. Because it's the right thing to do. Deli, you're not sacrificing your company for me, Jae-won. I won't allow it. She looked at the board. I'll resign effective immediately. You'll have my formal letter by end of day." She walked out before anyone could argue, before Jae-won could try to stop her, before she could break down. In the parking garage, she sat in her car and cried. She'd lost her job, the job that had saved her financially, the job that had brought Jae-won back into her life. But she'd made the right choice. Jae-won's company was his legacy. She wouldn't let him throw it away for her. Her phone rang. "Jae-won," she answered. "Don't quit." "I already did." "Then unquit. Come back. We'll figure this out." There's nothing to figure out. The board made their position clear. And honestly, they're not completely wrong. Our relationship does create complications. Maybe it's better this way. Better? How is losing you better? You're not losing me. You're keeping your company. And we can still be together. I just won't work for you anymore. Jae-won was silent for a long moment. I'm so angry right now. At me? At them, at the situation, at the fact that you're right, and I hate that you're right. I know, but Jae-won, I love you. And part of loving you is not letting you destroy what you've built. The company needs you. I'm just me. You're everything. Deli's heart cracked. I'll be okay. I'm a survivor, remember? I'll figure out my next step. Not alone. Whatever you do next, we do it together. Together, she agreed. She resigned that afternoon, and for the first time in 6 months, Deli was unemployed again. But this time, she wasn't alone. 1 year later, Deli stood in front of her new office, a sleek space in Bridgetown with Baptiste Events International emblazoned on the glass door. Her event planning business, resurrected and thriving thanks to Shin Industries contracts and Jae-won's connections. You did it, Jae-won said beside her. He'd taken the day off to be here for her grand opening. We did it. You're the one who connected me with half these clients. I made introductions. You secured the contracts with your talent. He pulled her close. I'm proud of you. And I'm grateful to you for everything. The past year had been challenging. Leaving Shin Industries had been financially scary, but it had also freed Deli to rebuild her business properly. And without the boss-employee dynamic, their relationship had blossomed into something deeper, more equal. They'd moved in together 6 months ago. Gotten engaged 3 months ago. A proposal on the same Barbados beach where they'd met, completing the circle. Remember when you ghosted me? Jae-won asked, reading her mind. My greatest mistake and best decision. Mistake because I missed out on 6 months with you. Best decision because it brought me to your interview, where you looked like you wanted to die. I did want to die. I thought my career was over before it started. Instead, you got a job, lost a job, and built an empire. Not bad for a year's work. Built an empire, found love, got engaged. Definitely not bad. Inside the office, Deli's phone buzzed. A message from May, her former coworker. Heard about the new business. Congratulations. Also, we all knew you two were together. The office pool on when you'd get engaged? I won $500. Thanks for that. Deli laughed, showing Jae-won the message. They knew. Apparently we weren't as subtle as we thought. Then it's a good thing you quit. Our secret-keeping skills are terrible. Everything about us is terrible. Ghosting, workplace relationships, boundary violations. And yet somehow it worked. Somehow. Deli kissed him softly. Thank you for not letting me ghost you twice. Thank you for being worth chasing, even when you were running. I'm done running. Good, because I plan to keep you forever. As the sun set over Bridgetown, Deli looked at her new office, her fiancé, and the life they'd built from one impulsive night and a lot of terrible decisions. Sometimes the worst professional choices led to the best personal outcomes. Sometimes ghosting someone created a second chance. And sometimes working for your one-night stand was exactly the disaster-turned-blessing you needed. Ready to go home? Jae-won asked. Always. But first, she pulled him back for another kiss. Thank you for being the best terrible decision I ever made. The feeling is mutual, Ms. Baptiste. Or should I say, future Mrs. Shin. How about just Deli, the woman who ghosted you and ended up exactly where she was supposed to be? Perfect. They left hand in hand, two people who'd started with one anonymous night and built something real from a foundation of mutual attraction, terrible workplace boundaries, and the courage to choose love over fear. And somewhere in Barbados, in a beach bar where it all began, a bartender served rum punch to tourists and smiled, remembering the couple who'd met there a year ago. Sometimes love stories began with ghosting. Sometimes they continued with inappropriate workplace relationships. But the best ones ended with two people choosing each other, again and again, until forever felt like the only possible outcome. She ghosted him after one perfect night. Then she had to interview to be his assistant. Somehow it became forever. What would you do if your one-night stand became your boss? Tell me in the comments. Don't scroll away. Smash that subscribe button. Your next obsession is coming.